Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Hope you're doing well. We are continuing our reading of Hamza Yusuf's commentary on Imam Mawalud's Matharat al Qulub. We are still dealing with the section about anger. So go ahead and listen to this as you drive. You're on the train. You're on the bus. You are relaxing in your bathtub, chilling like a villain. Whatever fun thing it is that you're doing. Let's begin. The objectives of the rites of worship and practices cannot exceed what is natural. Sexual attraction, like hunger, cannot be removed from the soul. Now this one is interesting because some people think that the attraction can go away if they simply see their wife give birth. But I'd argue that if you really are into somebody, you can't remove that attraction. Now their malice, their evil, their cold-heartedness, their nastiness can push out your love for them, but you still might actually dip into the cookie jar. Because attraction is attraction. Nor is it to one's benefit to try to do so. That's interesting. So he contends that if you're trying to remove sexual attraction from yourself, that it's not really in your best interest. Celibacy is not considered a virtue in Islam. I like this idea because it's if you get around somebody who is a celibate person, I feel more afraid around them than I would of somebody who does degenerate porn stuff. I mean that in the best of ways. What I mean is that I feel like there's more of a trickery behind a facade behind someone who's being celibate. Like I feel like they're gonna snap one day and do something horrendous, or they're extremely deviant behind closed doors. When you see like some chick who's like, I do this on Instagram, you're like, bimbo. You're not afraid of them. You feel sorry for them. You hope they change. But when I see someone who's celibate, I'm like, I get more suspicious. And I think that happens to a lot of people. And in Islam, you're allowed to have more than one wife and concubine. So clearly, we are not a celibate faith. Chastity and illicit sexual intimacy are. Church history tells of the Puritans who went so far as to swear off normal desires, such that sexual relations were not nearly tabooed between man and his wife. It became entirely a perfunctory activity of marriage, fleeced of the enjoyment that a husband and wife are not only entitled to have, but are encouraged to experience. So the Puritans are very cool people to study. I've studied them. I kind of want to do a whole series on the Puritans, but today, the people who, in American culture, get mad at conservative Muslims and conservative Christians are usually secular, liberal, feminist, atheists, and occultists, and they say to people, you're a Puritan, you're puritanical nonsense, they say. This is who they're referring to. Because the Puritans went a bit far. It's in the name, Puritan. Puritan. You know, they chose a very interesting name, didn't they? So, if you ever hear that, you'll know who they're referring to. The usual result of excessiveness is its antithesis. So they call this the pendulum effect, you know. A society that starts out with extreme puritanical ethics may turn into one of the overindulgence and licentiousness. So if you look at America right now, we had Christians who were high moral people. Disney, Nickelodeon, MTV, BET, VH1, Hollywood essentially, found a clever way to undermine that and slowly get people to act more and more animalistic and gross. They pushed better women, mothers, chase women to the curb, and prompted up Britney Spears, Cardi B, Nicki Minaj, you name it, and then found ways to disrupt and distort the youth. Now, they say, since so many young men are going towards the MGTOW movement, and so many girls are bragging about their body count on TikTok and doing OnlyFans and such, that the pendulum is going to swing back towards religious conservatism. Because people will live enough and be able to tell stories to their grandchildren how the liberal, feminist, atheists, the secularists, and occultists led our country astray. And people imagine, as I've heard many Christians say, actually, I have these conversations with Christians because Muslims in America, they're a little bit different. They're not as unified. And the people in the East, they kind of just say everything Western is bad, and you can't really have a conversation with them about it. But for those of us who are American, you can talk to the Christians who are real Christians, not fake liberal New Age Christians. And they just think that the pendulum is going to swing so far back that there'll be a day when we have lists of names of people. Because the secularists, communists, they have their lists of who they demonize and how they punish churches who don't put a rainbow flag, how they harass and stalk religious people online, how they've removed real Christian pastors from online, and eventually they'll do that to Muslims in America as well. But when that happens, I believe with them, the pendulum will go so far back that we'll have a way of having a sort of theocracy, a sort of religious hold on the country again. Because we tried out the ideas of the secularists, and we have women twerking in the street. Gavin Newsom, he made it legal to loiter for prostitution. I shared that with you on the community tab. He disbanded a task force that was meant to help children who are victims of sex trafficking. I shared that on the community post as well. You know, if you look at what they're doing, putting drag queens around kids, having certain inappropriate graphic books in public kids' libraries, they are going so hardcore against the innocence and piousness and purity of kids to groom them that Twitter and Reddit have actually banned the word groomer. So they're indulging and they are being completely licentious so hard that it's going to create a boomerang effect. And I think that'll be the new golden age of America when religion comes back into power and atheists are forced back into their basements to rant and rave about, how mad they are at God. But it is interesting how America started out that way, and now it's completely gone down, and hopefully, inshallah, it'll rise again. That'll take a lot of work, maybe not in my lifetime, but doesn't mean we don't try. So he has a great point here. On an individual level, the experience is similar. It is a principal feature of the Islamic faith that the middle way be the path that Muslims adhere to. The Quran itself calls the believers a middle nation, which commentators say includes moderation, which leads to a consistency of worship and conduct that one can carry on throughout his or her life. So notice this. Moderation breeds consistency, I think is what he's getting at. It is said that the Judaic legal tradition is based on stern justice, while at the foundation of the Christian phenomenon is the idea of categorical mercy. Okay, let's put that some quotation marks around that. Categorical mercy, where everybody should be forgiven no matter what. Yeah, I always hated that. I mean, I have some pretty wicked people in my family. I don't want to forgive them. Because forgiving them, they say, like my uncle who's a fundamentalist Christian, he's a Lutheran, I believe. Hardcore. My grandpa calls him a Shiite Christian. I don't know why, but he's so hardcore into religion. He always has been. I remember seeing him by the fireplace reading the Bible. on the rocking chair, the lazy boy rocking chair. So, you know, he and I would disagree on this forgiving stuff, you know, but there's just some people who they've done an action. Okay, so let me put it this way. I'm trying to word it right. Like my uncle told me, if you forgive people, it removes the burden in your heart so that you can move on with your life. And you can have acceptance that they are broken, this person who's harmed you. But I argue that if you forgive someone, you allow them to re-wound you again because you're letting them come near to you again. Because with forgiveness comes the dropping of the shield, in my perspective. Like, I don't forgive my dad for being a bad dad. I hate him. And whenever I try to talk to him or something, I'm always disappointed. So I don't want to forgive him. I want to hate him because he's worthy of hatred. And I don't think he's a good person, a good role model, or anything special. And I don't want to forgive him for being a bad father. Instead, I raised my child better, and I picked a man who is better than him, right? Better than my father. And I hope to help women pick men who are different than my father, right? So if I forgive him for his actions, it's like he gets off scot-free in my heart. Even though I know Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, no one escapes justice. But I think we've all had people, like the hackers who hacked me. I don't want to forgive them. I want them to go to the deepest pits of hell. And people say you can't tell an individual to go to hell. You should instead speak in generalities. I understand. I think all hackers should go to hell. Okay? So, it's hard. So I understand what he means by the categorical mercy philosophy. It's just too hard. Because if you've ever had like evil done, it can be hard, man. Because I've forgiven enemies. I've had like 2 enemies. I forgive them. But the issue we had was forgivable. Like, you forgive where you can, and where you cannot, you hold that line. So it's complicated. Let me know what you think, because it's not as simple as some people pretend it is. And if you think it's so simple, maybe you haven't had some severe trauma. I don't know. With Islam, a balance is struck suitable for the complex societies that have spread across the face of the earth. A balance between avoiding God's ghadab, okay, and this word is Ghadab, which means wrath and stern justice, okay, put a little annotation next to that, and hoping for God's rahmah, mercy. Yeah, I remember rahmah. So, ghadab, wrath and stern justice, rahmah, mercy. To take the straight way, one must have both. The law and the spirit of the law. The Sharia and the Hakika. Okay, so the Sharia is the law, and then the Hakika is the spirit of the law. Take the straight path, you need to have both for your guiding things. The law consists of rules, and the spirit of the law is mercy. God sent down the Sharia as a mercy, and the Prophet, peace be on himself, as a mercy to the world. Quran 21:107. There is an inward and outward state in every human soul. The inward being Iman. Okay, so let's annotate this. Inward being Iman, the condition of faith. And the outward being Islam, the manifestation or the practice of the faith. Now here, this reminds me of when atheists and murtads, ex-Muslims, say, "Oh, I don't hate Muslims, I just hate Islam." And it's like, you can't have it both ways. You can't, sorry. My personal opinion, it can only go on an individual level. But you can say, if they say, "Oh, I hate Islam, but I like this particular Muslim," then you're like, okay. But if they say, I hate Islam, but I hate Muslims, you're like, what? It doesn't work. Because it's more of a blanket statement instead of a niche specific example. So here when you see the Iman is the condition of the faith inward, and then Islam is the outward manifestation, you can't separate the two. To have faith is to put it in your heart and have Iman, and through that, the actions will come about, which then manifests Islam, which is the practice of the faith. So, when they say you have to only have your personal religion and keep it in you, that's not going to work, because having it inside changes the way in which you interact with the world, and therefore will manifest that world, which would be the world of Islam. So you can't do that, you know? It just doesn't make sense to me. When the two come together inwardly and outwardly, the resulting balance is a truly beautiful human being. One generally called a muhsin, one whose worship and character are excellent, and that is spelled M-U-H-S-I-N. This is the taker of the straight path, and what we all strive for and petition God for each time we stand in prayer. So we petition God to become a muhsin, to have excellent worship and excellent character. And the way you get excellent worship and character is through having Iman, which is inwardly, and then having the manifestation, aka the practicing of the faith, Islam, which is outwardly. And this is the straight path. So what else gets you there is the Sharia, and then the Haqiqah. Wow. Yes, very concise. Very concise. What do you think, fam? Let me know.